welcome back or welcome. If you're new here, my name is Trina. You probably are. I'm new here actually. This is a new channel. So my name is Trina, and I plan to talk about inner child healing, which is something I've been working on for the past couple years. And today I wanted to talk about some things I've been reflecting on, which I was gonna get to the topic of like inner child healing, and I haven't gotten there yet. Things come up and I'm like, I feel like I need to lay some groundwork before I start working on the bigger thoughts I have of dealing with the inner child. So the thing I want to talk about today is pain and suffering and things that hurt. I want to discuss them. I am a very emotional person, so I may tear up a little bit. And I'm also very vulnerable, and I'll try not to overshare. I tend to do that. So before I get started talking about that very lovely topic, I wanted to talk about the sponsor of this video, which is this girl right here. So I don't ever plan to have sponsors on this channel because, well, no one will probably ever watch these videos, so I don't know if I'll ever get reached out to, but I don't want to ever do that because of like the spirit of what I'm talking about. I really don't want to just like endlessly profit off of it, but I do want to introduce my my work, which is that I'm a freelance illustrator and I'm also an astrologer. So I do commissions and I also do readings, astrology readings. So if you're interested in that, please check out the link in the description. I also wanted to talk about, I made a 2025 moon calendar that has all the phases of the moon. If you haven't noticed yet by the name of the channel, I am a person who really loves the moon a lot. And I'm probably at some point going to talk about that, maybe even in this video. So I made this calendar which has all the moon phases for the year. Each wing of the moth or butterfly, I think this last year I had a butterfly, this is a moth. Each wing of the moth has a different season, and so yeah, it also has the eclipses for the year and the signs of the major moon phases. So definitely check that out. I have an Etsy where I sell it, and I also do, again, astrology readings, and I also do another type of thing where I mix my my skills of astrology with illustration, so I can draw a picture of the spirit of your natal chart, which, again, if you want to check that out, it's all in that link. Definitely check it out. Anyway, so I did want to start by talking about the kind of like the purpose of this channel. I did want to start out talking about inner child healing, and the reason for that is because I love the moon. In astrology anyway, I don't plan to make this channel where I talk about astrology a lot, but planets have certain significations and things they represent in a life or in the psyche. And the moon is really important for me because it has a lot to do with healing. It has a lot to do with emotions, about the body, about dreams, the unconscious mind. And so, you know, the name Mother Moon is not me. It's a figure in my life, or an archetype that I go to for wisdom, I'll say, and it's something I'll talk about more in the future. But the moon gets you in touch with your emotions, helps you understand your unconscious mind, why you repeat certain patterns and how to not repeat those patterns, but also how to embrace and integrate parts of yourself that may not be so acceptable. Instead of judging yourself and being like, oh, I'm such a bad person, or that was a bad decision, you know, understanding why, like the underlying reason why you make the choices you make, the things you do, which has been a very healing thing for me. So before I talk about those things, though, I did want to talk about pain and suffering and lay that groundwork for that, because I recently, well, it's the day after Christmas. And if you're a person who struggles with seasonal depression, you might know what I'm talking about when I say it's kind of like a milestone day of winter. It's like, this is the first hard day of the winter, because you've got Christmas to deal with first, and then suddenly you just get dropped. And I feel like the more joyous that Christmas was, the harder it is the day after Christmas. There's also a lot of songs that are written about the day after Christmas that I can think of, like, in my head, and I'm like, they're just depressing songs, you know? But then there's also days like New Year's Day, which is coming up, which I wanted to get ahead of, you know? Because I think, like, the beginning of the year and like January into February is a really difficult time for most people, and even when they don't have seasonal depression, it's just a tough time because it's very internal. In the winter, animals turn, they have to hibernate, so they go inward, they go into their holes in the ground, you know, and like, it's all internal, it's all unconscious, it feels a little bit like pain and suffering, you know, like you're more in tune with that pain and suffering, and it can be harder to deal with that. You can't go outside and be like, oh, look at this beautiful day, although you still could, because it is very beautiful in the winter. And this video is not about depression specifically. I am going to talk about spiritual things, and I don't always like mixing the spiritual with like depression, stuff like that. I feel like a lot of like spiritual guru, and I'm not a spiritual guru, I'm just a girl, okay? I'm just a girl. But I feel like a lot of spiritual gurus will tell you, like, you can't go on depression medication because you won't be able to feel your feelings or work through them. And that's not true. And if you are on depression medication and you can't feel anything, that's not normal. It might be in some extreme cases, but most people should be able to still feel their feelings and work through things that might trigger them or be difficult to deal with. Like, you can still deal with those things. So I disagree with people who say that, but and I think it's very valid to reach out to a therapist, to a psychiatrist, things like that. Just in general, in spiritual communities, in my last video I talked about manifestation and the pitfalls of that, but there's also this like self-help, new age spirituality thing that's going on that is like always promising to take you to the next step of your transformation, you know, to help you get rid of whatever that spirit thing is, to be able to manifest good things instead of the bad things. Like, how do we get rid of the bad things? How do we get rid of the bad in our life, you know? And there's definitely a little bit of a problem in these spiritual communities with avoidance of pain and suffering. And what eventually ends up happening is it gets so repressed that maybe it kind of works itself out in the situation that you were dealing with, but then it comes up in some other area of your life because it's like an unconscious pattern. And these like solutions, these cures and things, they aren't that. There is something inevitable about pain, about grief, about suffering, that you can't just throw it away. So yeah, basically, I was listening to this person talk recently about this particular, and I feel like I'm pulling from a few different conversations I've heard and things I've listened to recently and just putting it together. So, I was listening to someone talk about this particular topic, that basically the escaping suffering is an illusion. It's like it doesn't exist. You will continue to have these problems. And these spiritual industries and self-help gurus and stuff, they profit from like this promise that like some technique will fix you, or you know, and maybe it's even just a YouTube creators making videos and they're getting AdSense or like sponsorships or something like that, and they're just making things up, you know, but they're profiting off of this promise of like a pain-free existence, like one where you'll be more evolved and you'll be able to like not have to deal with these things. But it's just, in the end, it's just a type of repression. And maybe that one thing gets resolved, but then it resurfaces in a new way. People tend to trade like sufferings, like in their own life. Like, I feel like I go through something, I struggle with it, and then once I forget that thing, I'm on to the next thing, and I'm on to the next thing. And it's more about that pattern, that it's not that it needs to be fixed, but there needs to be a way to learn how to use that for your own growth and for your own betterment, you know? So, you know, in psychology, we know that in order for people to be happy, they have to have resistance. Resistance and setbacks and hardship. People need to be able to overcome something. If you live a life where you never, like, nothing is ever wrong and you have everything you need, I feel like we see that with celebrities, you know? Like, how much does it help them to have everything they need? Well, you always want something else. So you will continue to fill the void with things, whether it be drugs, sex, whatever, you know, it's a constant problem. And so that thing needs to be dealt with. The thing where it's like, I need. That thing needs to be dealt with. And the hardship itself, like the first hardship that most people go through in their, not most people, but the most major arc of people's lives in hardship is going from being a teenager to being an adult. Financial difficulties, things like that. Also, having to prove yourself to your parents. And it's like, I remember when I was a kid, I had a friend who said, when I have kids, I'm going to be best friends with my kids and they're going to love me and we're never going to have any problems. And I thought to myself, that's like, how do you know that? Like, how do you know that? And the reason I thought that, many years later, I realized that that is a very important struggle to have. If you don't have that struggle, there's no incentive to grow, to do anything better with your life. And, yeah, I mean, it's like, and right now, the world is in such a state where growing up and having financial problems is inevitable. Like, and having, like, I don't know, having problems with your parents or having problems with your own children, like, it's all very inevitable because there's a lot of generational problems. There's a lot of, you know, there's a lot. We really have not been dealt a very great hand. And so I feel like these like spiritual places are just saying like, we're going to get you to the next step of your evolution, become a whatever. And it's like, okay, so then your focus is on becoming a bad A, you know, sorry, I try not to cuss on my channel, becoming a bad A, you know, whatever, spiritual guru yourself or like whatever, but like all you're doing is just like, you're not dealing with the fact that there's actual like problems. So the point of, you know, these things that are so burdensome, that are so, you know, harsh and terrible, is not like to just feel, because I feel like people say like, feel your feelings, right? And like those words don't mean very much, or at least you ask someone and they can't really answer what that means. But to feel, like, to truly feel your feelings, to like, is kind of like to surrender to the fact that they exist, to allow them to have a place at the table of your life, to see them as teachers, to see them as a potential for growth. So the point is not to say like you're not there or to hyperfixate on the problem, but to say, I accept you. Like I accept that this is an area of my life, instead of endlessly wrestling with this idea of a pain-free life, where you're just constantly trying to get something out of your conscious mind. You are instead not laying down in defeat, but saying, in spite of this, I will be okay. And this will teach me more, this will make me stronger. And I know it's like, you know, I feel like people say that and it's like, okay, well, that's kind of weak. But also, it's important to realize that you have to reach outside of yourself for these problems, these like existential problems. You have to reach outside of yourself. So how can you ask for help from your family, from your loved ones, from your partner, but also to God or spirit? I feel like when you reach that point where you're absolutely, everything feels so hopeless and you're like really truly feeling the feelings and you're like, I'm there, you know, I'm feeling it. So this is like real to me. I'm not just like saying, hey, feel your feelings, but like when you say, God, hey God, like I can't do this anymore by myself. Like, can you help me? When you do that, it's like you start to begin to shift the focus off of the problem as being like this villain, and you're able to reach outside of yourself, that you're not trying to control everything, but you're also seeing it as an opportunity for surrender, for growth, for faith. I'm like, what if you don't believe in a God? Well, you know, you reach out to others, you reach out to the community, you reach out to, you know, the fellow man, like the collective consciousness. Like, other people have been through the same struggles. How can you help people who have gone through those struggles? But I feel like there is something really to like faith, like you get outside of yourself. You know, in like the cycle of grief, there's like, you know, there's the stages of grief, right? And like the end is acceptance. There's a reason for that. One of the other ways I wanted to talk about this was to say that it's this, and this has to do with the moon. So the moon is a planet that has to do with all those things. Not planet, it's a satellite, but in astrology it's considered a luminary that has to do with like emotions, the unconscious, body, dreams, stuff like that. But it also has some correspondences with gardening, because the moon phases are like very representative of like when to plant, when to sow, when to harvest, and all of that stuff. And I happen to be a gardener, and one thing I learned in gardening that no one ever talks about is the fall being one of the most ideal times to plant seeds, to transplant, to do a lot of things. A lot of things that you can do with perennials and biennials are best to be done in the fall. And so in the moon phases, you have this like beginning part of the moon cycle, which is the new moon, which is when you start thinking about what seeds you're going to plant. And then in the next, like the waxing crescent, you're supposed to plant those seeds. Like this is in like ancient wives' tales. Like people used to say you should decide what you're going to plant during the new moon and then plant your seeds in the waxing crescent. You know, there's never any mention of, and so waxing means like the building of the light to the eventual full moon. And then in the waning, that's when you know, everything closes up. That's when the light of the moon is dying, right? And so you never hear anybody talk about the dying of the light in correspondence with planting. But in gardening, in the hobby of gardening, in the practice of gardening, planting seeds in fall, specifically perennials and biennials, is it's the most valuable time to plant those seeds, to transplant those plants, because it helps the root system to go through a harsh winter. And a lot of times you'll plant those seeds and you see nothing until spring or summer next year. The seeds that you plant in, the spring, like the metaphorical seeds that you plant in the spring, are things that are going to come to fruition really quickly. The things that you plant in the fall, you have to wait a lot longer for. And I kind of see them as like seeds of surrender, because there is that possibility. You plant those seeds, you transplant a very expensive bush or something, and then it is too harsh of a winter. But there's that chance that the root system, if it's a good winter, if it's a harsh winter, but it's not below, I think it's like 20 below or something like that for too long, it will create an unbreakable root system. Like its immune system will be perfect. Like when it blooms, it will bloom proficiently. It also, like if you do a transplant, you take a plant from somewhere and you put it somewhere else, the coldness gives it the opportunity to go dormant. If you did that in the spring or the summer, there's a better chance it would die. So there's something about the suffering and the chaos of the root system, which is something under the ground that is struggling in the winter, that makes it so much stronger. And in the same way, if we can view those moments when we're suffering as something that will not just, what doesn't kill you makes you stronger, but like it actually does make you stronger. If you can sit alongside the suffering and, not hyper focus on it, but you just know it's there, and you look at your life holistically, where you're like, yes, I do have this thing, but in spite of that, I will still enjoy my life, knowing that that is still there. It teaches lessons. I was watching this video about the sixth sense recently, where this person just started, like, they were cooking. They were saying, like, basically, like, the Sixth Sense, the movie, is not even about ghosts. It's about things you don't want to deal with. Like, there's like a part where like there's this little girl that's really like looks really demonic, and the guy, like the kid, can see her, and he's like, what do I do? He's talking to the guy, which I don't want to give any spoilers, but he's talking to this like investigator or something, and like, I don't even remember. Honestly, I don't even remember the whole movie, but basically he's talking to this adult, and he's like trying to talk through like, well, what do I do? And he's like, why don't you just listen to what she has to say? And then through that, he helps this like crime get solved. Like through listening to her, it like heals her, and it like wraps up her story. And in the same way, those points of suffering, pain, inner demons, whatever it may be, if we listen to them and we let them sit at the table with us without being like, you control my life, and like, I'm gonna hyperfixate on you, it is something that can truly help us grow, because we can learn from it. We can receive critique based on it. Maybe there's something that we're not doing right. Maybe we're not honoring certain emotions the right way. I don't know. And everything is different. Every situation is different. But I do feel like, suffering is very valid, as long as you don't get too emo about it. But yeah, allowing your suffering to be there, surrendering to it instead of wrestling with it endlessly to just go away. So I hope that is something that makes sense. And in addition to that, I want to say that I'm also learning that, how like you're having a bad day, but like nothing happened. I don't know if you ever experienced this before. Like nothing bad happened. You just thought of something that was bad. And then that thing that happened to you that was bad made you think of another thing. And it makes you think of another thing. And you kind of just spiral downward. Like, you just have a bad day because of your mean brain, So there's this concept of like spiraling upward. It works the same way. At first, it is very difficult to spiral upward. And what I mean by that is to think of something that's positive. Like, yes, I know this companion, this suffering is here. But also, you start looking at things you're thankful for. I'm thankful for, man, I'm so glad I can breathe air. I'm so glad that, like, the sun is out and it's beautiful, and it feels really fake at first, until you practice it. Because whatever your brain, so our minds are geared towards survival. So we have a negativity bias where we like to focus on things that are bad because we think it will protect us from harm. So it's interesting because I was just talking about how we avoid harm. So we have this tendency to like avoid dealing with issues when we need to deal with it. But then when we need to like let something go, or like we have too much of a negativity bias, we can needlessly get stuck on that. So it's important to start gearing your brain towards the direction of thankfulness. And you can also be thankful for those difficult parts of your life. And I know it's like, I hate hearing that myself. It reminds me of when I was a kid and people would be like, you're just not grateful, and that's not what I mean. That's not what I mean at all. So, but yeah, thinking of one good thing today, just one good thing to be thankful about. Maybe it's a memory from the past, something very specific. Maybe it was somebody complimenting your hair like 10 years ago, a day, the best day of your life, thinking about the best day of your life, like really feeling yourself in that situation. Yeah, that was a really good day. And then maybe from that, you get another thought of something positive from that. Yeah, that day, like, I had pizza, and like, gosh, I love pizza. Like, I don't know, it's like, I'm just so thankful that like I get to enjoy pizza. Like, what would life be without that, And then you spiral upward from there. It takes time. I feel like you have to start with like one or two things. And I try to do like a thankfulness practice every day. That wasn't really what this video was about, but I wanted to talk about it because I feel like it's worthwhile to talk about. Because if you are going to embrace the pain as a lesson, as something to be thankful for, it's important to be thankful for the easy and good things, to have a almost like a baseline of positivity so that you know how to deal with those more difficult things and see them as more positive. And so I hope this was helpful at all. Definitely leave a snowflake emoji, because it's winter now and we're gonna get through this through thankfulness and embracing the things that hurt, embracing them as a part of ourselves that is very valid and that will help us grow as people, that will make us, like the plant that needs the cold tolerance, the hardy root system to be built in the harshest of winters. May we keep thriving through the spring and the summer and all of that stuff. I hope that this was helpful. At some point I will get to the actual thing I wanted to talk about on my channel, but I hope that you've enjoyed. Leave a comment. Please leave a comment if you watch this. Like, even if you don't want to do the emoji, leave a comment. You could even say something mean. I don't care. I do care. It will hurt my feelings, but like I welcome any lessons. Maybe, hey, like your bangs look kind of silly today. I feel like I just don't know how to control them, but that's a whole other story. Anyway, I hope this has been helpful. And I hope that you have a wonderful New Year. Happy New Year. Merry Christmas. Happy New Year. Happy holiday. And we will get through this. We will get through this season. If you also struggle with seasonal depression, stay tuned, because I'm going to make lots of videos about inner healing and connecting to your inner child. And I feel like winter is a great time to do that. Because by the time the spring comes, it's just like yes, let's go. And you're just like fully ready to immerse yourself in it. And yeah, anyway. Thank you so much for joining. Have a great day. Bye.